Imagine spending 20 years of your life mastering the intricate art of the blade, training until your hands bleed, only to be taken down in a fraction of a second by someone who picked up a metal tube 3 hours ago. Gunpowder did not just change the way nations fought, it effectively flatlined the artistry and prestige of human combat, transforming ancient martial traditions into a cold, clinical numbers game of mass production and logistics. But what if that single chemical reaction had never occurred? What if the Chinese alchemists, looking for an elixir of immortality in the 9th century, had simply failed to mix sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate? If gunpowder never entered the equation, the entire trajectory of global civilization would alter completely, plunging us into an alternate timeline where the sword remains king and the greatest warriors in history never went obsolete. Without the invention of firearms, the fundamental nature of global power, empires, and architecture would look completely unrecognizable today. In our timeline, the introduction of cannons rapidly ended the golden age of castles, because even the thickest stone walls could eventually be blasted into rubble by explosive force. But in a gunless world, the fortress remains the ultimate symbol of security, evolving over centuries into sprawling, multi-layered mega-complexes designed to withstand decades of siege warfare. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 would not have happened at the hands of massive supercannons, completely shifting the balance of power between the East and the West and leaving ancient empires intact for centuries longer. European feudalism would likely survive well into the modern era, as kings and lords would still rely heavily on an elite class of professional, lifelong warriors rather than quickly drafted peasant conscripts armed with cheap, easily mass-produced muskets. This sets the stage for a world where military technology focuses not on expanding the distance from which you can kill an enemy, but on perfecting the tools of close-quarters engagement, mechanical leverage, and the physical capabilities of the human body. Think about how this would change the classic medieval knight. In our history, full plate armor vanished from the battlefield simply because bullets could easily pierce through it, making heavy metal suits a dangerous liability rather than a reliable defense. In a world without guns, however, armor development would never stop, triggering a multi-century arms race focused entirely on metallurgic perfection. By the time our timeline reached the Industrial Revolution, blacksmiths and scientists in this alternate world would be developing lightweight steel alloys, ultra-flexible chainmail weaves, and eventually modern materials like titanium plating and carbon fiber reinforcement. A battlefield in the 19th or 20th century would not feature lines of soldiers shooting rifles through thick clouds of smoke, but rather agile, heavily armored shock troopers who could sprint across fields completely immune to arrows and crossbow bolts. Because long-range options would be restricted to mechanical devices like longbows and massive compound crossbows, individual strength and athletic endurance would remain the core metrics of a soldier's value. The crossbow would become the highly engineered sniper rifle of this world, utilizing advanced pulleys, hydraulic tension, and synthetic strings to deliver enough kinetic force to crack armor. But its slow reload times would mean hand-to-hand combat remains the ultimate deciding factor in every major military engagement. Moving over to the East, the lack of gunpowder completely preserves and elevates the legendary warrior cultures of Japan and China. In our actual history, the samurai and the ninja were slowly phased out of active military relevance during the peaceful Edo period, largely because firearms had centralized power and made individual martial skill less critical for winning wars. But in this alternate reality, the sword is not just a ceremonial symbol. It is the absolute pinnacle of political authority and military dominance. The samurai caste would remain the elite ruling class, their entire lives dedicated to the absolute mastery of tactical leadership, discipline, and blade proficiency. Martial arts would not become a recreational hobby or a historical preservation project. They would be integrated into the core educational curriculum of every major nation, because in a world of cold steel, if you cannot defend yourself, you cannot survive. This total lack of explosive firepower would also trigger the golden age of espionage and covert operations, turning the ninja into the most valuable asset in global geopolitics. Without cannons to blow down fortress walls or bombs to terrorize populations, wars would have to be won from the inside out, making the art of stealth and assassination the primary tool of statecraft. The shinobi would evolve from feudal saboteurs into highly sophisticated, state-sponsored black ops agencies, and their toolkit would become terrifyingly advanced over the centuries. Since chemistry would not be focused on developing explosive propellants, scientific minds would direct all their energy toward advanced biochemistry, toxicology, and anatomy instead. A modern ninja in this timeline would not be relying on clunky matchlock pistols, but rather silent pneumatic wrist launchers firing synthetic neurotoxins that can paralyze a target in seconds. They would master the use of monomolecular wire traps stretched across doorways, non-explosive smoke screens created from complex natural chemical reactions, and highly specialized climbing gear engineered to scale the smooth, soaring walls of modern architectural fortresses. The battlefield would be silent, dark, and incredibly tense, driven by precise, targeted strikes rather than chaotic artillery barrages. This complete lack of ballistic weapons would also redefine how humanity views the limits of the human body, elevating warrior monks to the absolute top of the global military hierarchy. In our timeline, institutions like the Shaolin Temple or the warrior monks of Japan eventually lost their political and physical dominance because a stray bullet does not care how disciplined your mind is or how many decades you spent training. A firearm can end the life of a master who has achieved physical perfection just as easily as it can end anyone else's. But remove the gun from history, and the warrior monk becomes an almost supernatural force on the battlefield. Military doctrine across the entire globe would begin to mirror monastic discipline, focusing heavily on human biology, biomechanics, and mental control. Soldiers would be trained to regulate their own heart rates, maximize their adrenaline flow through specialized breathing techniques, and condition their nervous systems to withstand immense physical pain. The quarterstaff, the halberd, and the spear would remain the true kings of infantry warfare, as reach and leverage are everything when fighting with cold steel. A disciplined formation of peak-condition soldiers wielding reinforced polymer spears would be virtually unstoppable, moving with a level of fluid, synchronized coordination that resembles a deadly, beautiful dance. If we fast-forward this alternate history into the 21st century, we find a world that looks like a fascinating blend of ancient tradition and futuristic technology, a style we might call blade punk. Imagine walking down the streets of a modern metropolis like Tokyo, London, or New York, where massive neon billboards are not advertising the latest smartphones or video games, but rather high-end luxury swords, advanced custom-fit body armor brands, and upcoming international martial arts tournaments. The structure of daily life and public safety would change dramatically. Street crime would look entirely different, because mass shootings simply do not exist. Law enforcement officers would not carry sidearms on their belts. Instead, they would be equipped with advanced, non-lethal defensive tools such as quick-hardening ballistic foam launchers, high-voltage shock batons, and lightweight carbon fiber riot shields. Bank robberies and corporate espionage would require an absolute mastery of stealth, agility, and melee coordination, resulting in high-stakes, silent heist operations rather than chaotic, violent shootouts. Even civilian fashion would adapt, with high-end clothing lines incorporating subtle Kevlar or chainmail weaves into everyday suits and jackets for personal protection. Global warfare in this 21st century blade punk world would be localized, highly stylized, and profoundly personal. Because there are no ballistic missiles, carpet bombings, or nuclear warheads to instantly level entire cities from thousands of miles away, large-scale conflicts would be fought room by room, street by street, with close-quarters, blade clearance operations. Aviation and drone technology would still develop because flight relies on aerodynamics and internal combustion engines, not gunpowder, but their military application would change. Instead of carrying explosive payloads, modern military drones would be used for dropping non-explosive kinetic darts, deploying localized tear gas, or acting as aerial spotters for massive, automated mechanical ballistas hidden miles away. Even more fascinating is how international diplomacy might adapt to this environment. Without the threat of total nuclear annihilation to keep the peace, nations might return to an ancient, honorable tradition to avoid devastating their populations, the concept of state-sanctioned trial by combat. Instead of sacrificing millions of young soldiers in massive trenches, international borders and trade disputes could be settled in a global arena where the absolute finest champions of each nation, the ultimate modern knight, the most precise samurai, or the most lethal monk, fight to decide the fate of their country in front of a roaring world audience. Living in a world where individual merit, physical training, and artistic martial discipline govern everything sounds incredibly cinematic and romantic. It replaces the messy, noisy, and impersonal chaos of our own history with a world that values honor, dedication, and the ultimate realization of human physical potential. It is easy to look at this blade punk timeline and think it is strictly superior, a place where the soul of combat was never lost to industrial factories churning out millions of identical lead bullets. However, it is vital to recognize the hidden price of such a world. While the invention of the firearm undoubtedly took the glory and the artistry out of warfare, it also served as a strange, brutal democratizer of human society. In a world ruled strictly by cold steel, the strongest, the most physically gifted, and the wealthy elite who have the luxury and resources to train from early childhood will always rule unconditionally. The gun, for all its destructive horror, historically gave the ordinary peasant a fighting chance against the armored tyrant. Without it, the world might look infinitely cooler, filled with legendary swordsmen and shadowy ninjas, but it would also be a far harsher, more rigid place where power belongs solely to those who possess the sharpest blade and the strongest arm. If you were suddenly dropped into this alternate reality, forced to navigate a society where your survival depended entirely on your physical discipline and choice of steel, you would have to choose your path very carefully. Whether you chose the disciplined precision of the longsword, the fluid lethality of the katana, or the quiet focus of the martial arts, you would quickly realize that in a world without gunpowder, your body is your only shield, and your skill is your only lifeline.